let's hand over to the fabulous, somebody who does know what she's doing, the wonderful Susan Darlington.
Thank you. Once I know what I'm doing, but thank you for the vote of confidence. After that long list of Manchester bands, I kind of feel rather guilty that I haven't actually got any poems about any of them. Though I have tried to get a few poems for you, which have got a vague music theme. The ones that I have got are all American bands, so sorry about that. First one I'm going to open with is called On Becoming Courtney Love. So for those of you who don't know, Courtney Love is the founder member of a band called Hole. And she was married to Kurt Cobain, who recorded a track called Penny Royal Tea, which in itself was used to bring about abortion. And that introduction is probably longer than the poem itself. I bleach my hair into tangles, comb the beauty counter for the brightest shade of lipstick and make my mouth wounded red. I salvage scuffed Mary Janes, wear with carpet-burned knees above a baby pink slip stained with bloodied roses. I knock back shot glasses until my mascaraed eyes run, become feral with blindness as I stalk a stage of dolls' heads. Strum 3 chords in blue on a battered electric guitar, polish flaking from my nails and bruises pouring from my tongue as I sing my reverse Penny Royal Tea to create life inside of me until my throat is ravaged, the incantations bloom withered. Thank you. This next one, when I was growing up, one of the music scenes that was quite important to me was Riot Girl. And one of the seminal bands, I don't use the word too lightly there, was Heavens to Betsy, who later morphed into Sleater Kinney. And this song references one of their songs called My Red Self. It's called Sisters. It was a summer we made a pinky promise to always be sisters. Afternoons spent locked in our bedrooms, we bloomed from schoolgirls into goddesses, with our knee-high socks, vintage camisoles, and thick gloops of lipstick in the darkest plums and reds. It was the colour of menstrual blood. It was the colour of power. We used to write slut down our arms and witch across our bellies, marvelled at how liberated we were as we sang our favourite records. Never wear white, or your shame will creep through. Knowing that in those vinyl grooves, there was the possibility of change. Thank you. This next one, again, is related to a song. And it was written specifically for a call-out from a poetry magazine about songs and associations with them. So this one is referencing a Sharon Van Etten track called We Are Fine. It was called It's All Right. There's blood in my pants, a cramping pain in my belly, and Sharon Van Etten is on the stereo telling me, it's all right. It's all right. I slide down the tiles, curl around the toilet bowl, try and stop the shaking by mouthing the words, it's all right. It's all right. But the song stops playing, and still nothing is all right. Because even though I ached for this child, right now, I want my mother to gather me in her arms, stroke my hair, and repeat until I can really believe. It's all right. It's all right. Thank you. This next one's a very old one. It's from my book, Under the Devil's Moon. And again, it's a response piece, this time to a song by a band called Smog, which includes the line, I break horses, I don't tend to them. And in the song, it's a metaphor for breaking women, which obviously I took exception to, so this is a response to it. It's just called Horse. In the stables, the brass stirrups and bits jingle in the breeze, and the horse gently snorts. I stand on a box stool, wrap my hands in its mane and haul myself up bareback. I scarcely touch its sides before it starts to walk, to trot, to canter. The cold air tears at my throat. The wind whips pins from my plait. The branches we crash through rip at my skirt. And I start to gag. And my hair unravels down my back. And capillary red pinpricks marble white thigh. And I don't break horses. No. Horses break me into someone who is free. Thank you. Yeah, and this next one again, it's not directly related to a song this time. It's in fact related to a piece of work by someone called Francesca Woodman. I don't know if you can see that, but at the top, sorry, at the bottom, there's some lines saying, then at one point, I did not need to translate the notes. They went directly to my hands. And that's the starting point for this particular piece. And Francesca Woodman worked in the 70s. She's what we would now class, I guess, as a surrealist or as a feminist poet, as a surrealist photographer, sorry. But she largely went unnoticed within her lifetime, and she tragically killed herself when she was still in her 20s. So this piece is called Translate the Notes. And then at one point, I didn't even need the piano. I swept its ivory keys into the concert of my skin and laid them in the caesura between my vertebrae. I cut the hammer strings from the unwritten frame and stretched them along the steel line of my nerves until my whole being vibrated with translated notes. I tightened the tuning pins in my fingertips and my whole body became music under my touch. Thank you. In the news recently, there was a story about the Regent honeyeater, which is an Australian bird that's now become so endangered that it's forgetting its own song, and scientists are actually playing songs from the adults to try and remind the youngsters how to sing. So this poem is a vague response to it. It's called Forgotten Song. The honeyeaters fell with notes on their tongues, with songs still bubbling up from their throats. We tried to pull scores out their gullets, to release the melodies into the too quiet air. We tried to finger the holes notched down the syrinx to relearn their calls. When we failed, the half-remembered lines descended into a cacophony of caws, squawks, croaks. Mother tongue forgotten, there was no one left who could read their minds or look into their hearts and translate the babel into what they wanted to say, which was. Thank you. I'm going to close with a poem called Red. When my niece was born, she's got this amazing red hair. And yet the first thing that my mother said was, well, it's a shame about the hair colour. And this is from someone who's got 2 children with red hair. So I wanted to write a piece which would hopefully give my niece a bit of pride in a hair colour. So yeah, it's called Red. This is our history, told through fire and water. It starts in our home, a place of gods and dragons that we left behind to travel over the sea to the land of angels. But what angels were these that burned our grandmothers at the stake as witches and drowned our mothers in the village ponds as heretics? Yet, child, the shame is not ours to bear. We are Lady Lazarus, and with our hair of red, we will dance in the flames. We will sing underwater, and we will prevail. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much to our very own Riot Girl, Susan Darlington there. Fantastic, Susan. Thank you so much. Couple of questions, Sue, before we let you go. First of all, where can people get hold of your poetry, or do you have online events coming up? Is there anything you would like to promote?
Yeah, I can put the link to my book, to my collection, in the chat after I've finished reading, though it is available on Amazon. I think the next reading I have coming up is at a Todmorden event called Wednesday Writes, and that's coming up this Wednesday.
And let's
Again,
hope,
if you look online, you should be able to find the details.
and let's hope we're all performing back in front of real audiences before too long. And secondly, as a Yorkshire lass, who would you say were your favourite Manchester band?
My favourite Manchester band is definitely the Smiths. I think, growing up, they were one of the gateway acts for me in a way to so many things, to kitchen sink drama, to the work of Oscar Wilde, Sheila Delaney, all that fantastic stuff. But I think as well, Morris's lyrics, it's a cliche, isn't it? But so many people, we listened to him and we related to him. It felt like he was talking about our lives. And I guess that was one of the things that got me into writing. I wanted to be able to write and to have other people relate to me in the way that I did to him. I don't know if I've achieved that. I like to think so in a very small part.
Yeah.
But I think becoming a Morrissey fan now is almost this dirty little secret, isn't it? It's we're becoming a small minority who would admit to such a thing. And even when I say I like the Smiths, I always say I like the Smiths, but not Morrissey. Because he's become more and more associated with all the far right views. And I think that's it's a really interesting area where we still listen to all the fantastic records that Phil Spector produced, say, and yet he's a convicted murderer. Gary Glitter is now written out of history for underage sex with children. And Morrissey's now in this kind of in-between stage where we acknowledge the Smiths, but he's becoming more and more someone who we don't want to associate with.
Woody Allen once said that he loves the music of Mahler, but it makes him want to invade Poland. And it is an interesting debate about whether you can still like the artist, even if you don't like, the person behind them, kind of thing. Yeah. I think we will be revisiting the topic of Morrissey when we get our guest speaker in later, but thank you very much for opening that one up. Give your appreciation one more time to the fabulous Susan Darlington. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Apart from forgetting about the recording, I've also had a little message from my friend Jeff in Bolton telling me that Buzzcocks were from Bolton and not from Manchester. And I should really have mentioned Bolton, home of Badly Drawn Boy and Cherry Ghost. I hope I've got that right at least, Jeff. So, and thank you to all the people who offered to send me some oxygen when I was going through my little rant about the great Manchester bands. I'm not going to talk about Manchester bands anymore because I've got somebody far more informed and far more legendary on the Manchester music scene who's going to tell us his views on various things through an interview. So I'd like to hand over to Sale and to the wonderful writer and journalist, Mr. Mick Middles. Are you there, Mick?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today. And at the risk of sounding like a psychiatrist, I'd like to go back to your childhood because I'd be interested to know when you first started to get into music, whether it was your parents or whether there was music in your household. What's your first memories of music?
I'm 65 now, so Beatles, obviously. Although I don't like the Beatles anymore, but they were always in the house, and not physically, but Elvis, all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't. If you look back at the early 70s, you just look at the album charts. 29 out of the top 30 are classics. Any given week in 1971, you just look at this astonishing amount of music. So that was it, really. I was hopeless at school, absolutely. I went to the kind of school that it was like spending 6 years on the set of Kes. At my school, if you were good at something, you were discouraged from doing it. If you're absolutely awful at something like metal, you were like thrown into it. You had to. But it just didn't work for me. So I skipped out at the beginning of '76. I went into catering in the Lake District. Just nothing was happening in Manchester at all. Just touring bands, absolutely nothing. So I went to the Lake District. I saw more bands at Lancaster than I did here. So I missed the Sex Pistols at the Leicester Free Trade Hall twice because I was up there. I came back in November, and suddenly, we were like, within weeks, we knew all these people in Manchester who were going to Funk, going to the Ranch and Electric Circus and stuff. And it just like took off from there. It wasn't intentional. And one of my friends, Steve Shy, had started a fanzine called Shy Talk. He used to work behind the bar at the Ranch and sell it at the bar. So we thought, we'll do a fanzine. Only one thing I really good at in life was writing. So there's a fanzine called Gassed Up. To this day, I have no idea what it means. and it's terrible, you know. Well, it's of its time, you know. So it's to tell my friend Martin Ryan actually published a book, which, to my horror, the back end of the book was a whole of gassed up, as it was, you know. I remember turning up, first people we interviewed were buskers, who I would say are from Manchester, but picture it's from Lee, and I would say are from Manchester. But and we turned up for the interview, and they said, "Well, go and ask me some questions." Oh, questions? Thought about that. No, literally, I hadn't thought about questions until we were actually in the pub interviewing. That was the first interview. We did 3 issues of that, and it petered out. And I just started sending reviews to Soundspace, as simple as that. I do come from a family of journalists, strangely enough, but this has nothing to do with anything like that at all. Just started sending reviews to Sounds. Now, I don't know whether people appreciate that Sounds and the NME were selling about 100, 150,000 per week in those days. Compare that, say, to Mojo today, which is about 17,000. That's the difference. And there was nothing else going. You know, there was no phones. There was nothing else going on. So that's where you got all your knowledge from. And it was within weeks to be able to go and see a band, a small band. It's certainly my favourite Manchester band, The Distractions. We didn't get mentioned back then. Shame on you for not knowing Yargo. Apologies. But anyway, yeah, fair enough. Go and see a small band and only play 3 gigs, and then do a review, write a review, which they can sometimes put at the top of the page, and 150,000 readership would say that is something that is never been heard of. And also in those days, record companies had money. You got paid for writing. You know, nobody gets paid for writing anymore, not like they used to. And it just went on from there. You know, I ended up writing for about 7 or 8 different magazines, went around the world with it. You know, had a great time. And Manchester scene just exploded. So, you know, you could go to 3 gigs a night if you wanted to. It was just incredible for a number of years. Sadly, it's not. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens after COVID. But, you know, it's not like it.
Mick, just going back to your childhood, you said there was your parents were music journalists and there was Elvis and the Beatles in the house. Do you remember the first record that you bought independently with your pocket money?
Yeah, I can actually. The first record I bought independently was actually Sgt. Pepper's, which is an album I really don't like. I mean, I'm not a big Beatles fan. I like the early Beatles, like the pop stuff more than anything else. When you got to Sgt. Pepper and the White Album, I can't even go near. I can't even walk near it. You know, I just don't like the White Album. Like all double albums, it'd be much better if it was a single album, or maybe even as an EP. I don't know. But yeah, it was Sgt. Pepper. It was just everywhere, you know. And I actually remember walking the shop. How much are records? You know, and they said, well, Sgt. Pepper is so much. So I'll have that then. Basically it. But you know, yeah, within a year I had like a big collection of albums. I don't know where I got the money from. Absolutely don't know. Probably mugged grannies or something. I honestly had no idea how we could afford that.
My first ever single was a very obscure one, Good Grief Christina by Chicory Tip. I wonder if you can remember the first single you ever bought. In the days of downloads, people are not going to have that memory anymore, are they?
I didn't actually bought. I don't know. Well, the thing is, it's probably something like Deep Purple. It was the first band I saw at the King's Hall, Bellevue, '71. I think Deep Purple and Rock had just come out, and I remember that the lights went off, and you just saw the little red speakers, red things that took the WEM speakers, and then bang, they came in and did speaking, which is as punk as anything ever came, strangely enough. And from that moment, it's like, well, this is, you know, there's nothing like this, and it carried on, of course, you know. Yeah, mainly then it was touring bands, obviously, as I said before. It was, you know, so we saw everybody, you know, the Who, Stones, Led Zeppelin, all of them, you know, and it was just incredible time.
And then what about your drift into music journalism? You mentioned your parents and you mentioned fanzine. So were you a kind of DIY journalist? There wasn't really a career path or a training schedule. How did you get into it?
I just got into it through Sounds. So to be honest with you, it was just a question of writing reviews for about 6 months or so, then progressing into interviews. And the first interview was the first interview in the National Press with Joy Division. And it was a terrible interview, actually. But to this day, every 5 years, it gets published in American websites and get paid for it, you know, and it was an awful thing. I mean, it was. I did the interview in a pub, but I had to meet them at Tony Davidson's famous rehearsal room, Regent Street, where the Lovely Town part was filmed, you know, the video. It was just like I heard this dull drone. Now I'm not going to swear now, but I opened the door and the band were playing mid song and stopped playing and turned towards me, and then turned to Rob, the manager, Rob Grett, and said, "Who's this?" So and so. Who's this, Rob? And oh yeah, hi lads, he's come to drink you for towns. I forgot to tell you, you know. And it was like, and they played a full set for me, and then we went to the pub, and they were the worst interview I've ever done. I think. I mean, the worst set of. I mean, they had nothing to say, and I don't think they ever did really, in a strange sort of way. You know, they had a history of bad interviews, particularly in sounds. Actually, Dave McCullough, great writer, couldn't get them at all. You know, they just didn't want to know, which is very, very odd. You know, but it served them well to be aloof. You know, yeah, and then it was just a question of you get to know your features editor, you get to know your reviews editor, you ring them every week, whatever's happening, they just send you. So. You know, I say back then, I mean, I remember one thing, because Factory started, it just began, you know. I mean, before I got to know Wilson because he started the club first, and then Factory Records started. But I remember I used to like rock as well, and I remember going and seeing Wilson rang up, "You got to come down and see my band, a certain ratio." Well, I told them that week, you know. I do like them now very much. I said, "But I'm going to Motorhead tonight," and he said, "What, you'd rather go and see Motorhead and Girls' School at certain ratios?" Yeah, right, I would. I was backstage, and it was like, you know, I mean, you know, I'm not going to describe what went on backstage in those sort of situations. It was nothing sordid, but there was a lot of imbibing of various sorts. Yeah, I was 23 years old. What am I going to tell them? Sit in a certain ratio, miserable lot, you know. But they're a great band.
You mentioned Tony Wilson, and I know you've written prolifically about Joy Division and the factory scene and so on. Tony Wilson once said, "Some people make money and others make history." Do you think that's Factory Records in a nutshell?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, it's really odd. I mean, I wrote a book about Factory, and the odd thing is how it fell together, and things seemed to work for them. And I don't really think they thought it out. I think it just went. The classic example is Unknown Players, which you know, the logo, which is around the world now. It's like Man United, you can't stop it. And yet it was literally just Bernard finding it in a book. And saying to Peter Savile, actually, we have it white. The sleeve can be white on the page, and put big black symbol, big black across the whole sleeve, and it came back black with a small. And Rob Gretton went absolutely crazy. I had to pick up the artwork from Palatine Road, the factory office, and take it to the factory and give it to Rob. I don't know why he asked me to do it, just that Rob was at the club and Joy Division were playing that night. And I gave it to him and he went, "Oh no, lads will go mad. It's black, they wanted it white." Like, typical people, we always get it. And yeah, you know, look at it, it's gone on and on and on. So you can't really say he got it wrong. It's a very enigmatic symbol, even though it wasn't really them where it came from. It's just out of a book.
How important do you think Joy Division were to music in general and Manchester music in particular?
I think I probably saw Joy Division about at least 20 times, all over the place. And I've never seen a band move as fast musically as Joy Division. And from being very, very naive in the early days, I don't know how they did it. I don't think they know how they did it. Just somehow the balance was perfect. And they went from that. When Hannock came in, it did change. The drumming changed. It changed Steve's drumming, made it live as well. I only read yesterday that somebody said, "Well, Joy Division were two bands, band on record and the band live." I'm not sure. I think it did change, and he made it. Hannock somehow made it more intense for live performance. That clip Eurobeat, you know. I think they were the premier band at the time. All the fans Paul as well, obviously, you know, who really had nothing in common with Joy. They hated it. Most of most of Manchester bands absolutely hated each other. There wasn't camaraderie going on at all. And each other, you know. If you gets something from Joy Division, what do you think of the Fall? And we're talking about, you know, hate them. It's like that. But yeah, in a good way.
Another quote to throw at you. Peter Hook, in the biography Unknown Places of Joy Division, said that the lyrics of Unknown Places are the longest suicide note in history. I just wonder if you ever met Ian Curtis and you know what kind of troubled genius you found him, either through reading or through his music.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a really odd thing, because Ian Curtis was probably, to me, Ian Curtis was the nicest in a sense. If you go to say, I remember going to Leeds University to see them and actually going backstage, and they just completely ignore you. But Ian would be the one running over with a can of lager or whatever, you know, just saying welcome. But it might just have been his own devices. I don't know. I didn't know him well enough to see beyond that. It's two schools of thought. I didn't see his genius at all, really. You know, I've never seen him dance like that before. Obviously, that's what drew you in. And he was commanding the band, and it was. I don't know where it would have gone. Nobody does. I can't imagine how they would have broken America, because they weren't U2. They weren't that. Nor went on and did well, obviously. But, I know that Ian's suicide took place. I actually got married that night. It wasn't a good night. And Rob and a lot of Manchester people were at the wedding that night. That's where they were. And they were trying to get, I know for a fact, Genesis P. Orange actually called the venue, trying to get Rob to come, not right about Ian. He said he spoke to him on the phone that afternoon. Some people say that never happened and he made it up. We don't know. But he was close to him. There were stories that he was going to leave Joy Division and go with Genesis doing something in Paris and all this, but no one quite knows the truth. But obviously, everything filtered down to that. Now, I don't know. The American tour was starting 2 days later. The third day, Rob used to work them so hard, and the third day I noticed was supporting them would be Husker Du, very young Husker Du, in Husker Du's hometown. Now, Joy Division, you see, could be an immense live band and they could be terrible. And I think, could they have followed Husker Du in Husker Du's hometown? Played badly. It would be a difficult ask. You know, I don't know why Rob put them on that. You know, maybe he didn't know who Husker Du were then. It was a long time ago. But I think Ian was terrified of going to America, really, and do it. He would never be a Bono. He would never do that, play that game. I just can't see. In some way, Joy Division, they could contain forever in that, and that's made them big enough. You know, that's the irony, isn't it? It would be awful to play middle of the road stuff now, wouldn't it? I don't know.
And I think we should address the spectre of Morrissey, since Susan raised it. So I just wonder, first of all, what you felt about the Smiths in their heyday, and how you feel. It's back in the news again, isn't it? There's a very unflattering depiction of him on The Simpsons with Benedict Cumberbatch doing the voice that Morrissey has taken exception to. But I wonder how you felt about the Smiths and how you feel about Morrissey now with these recent proclamations on politics.
Yeah, I mean, Smiths were a great band. I mean, I think thinking that something like the festival with summer, the G-Mex and all Manchester bands played, you know, all of them. Smiths were the best band.
Yeah,
Smiths were the best band on that day. And the next day they played at Salford, didn't they, for their 2 finals gigs. And Morris is an absolute genius lyricist. There's no two ways about it. He was never a nice man as far as I didn't really. He tried to write sounds actually, and then he did write slightly for Record Millers. He wanted to be a music journalist, and he wrote 2 little books early on, and he didn't like me at all. But since he was just like that. You know? But a tremendous talent. I don't know whether maybe the real Morris has come out later days, and it's not really people like. It's a shame because it's tainting the Smiths. I think, you know, 3 of those 4 albums are Stonewall classics, don't they? You might say 4 of them, but it's tainted a bit, I think. And I think quite odd that Joy Division seems to be the band that's moving more than anyone at the moment. You know, it's more interested in them than anything. But the Smiths, I say they're great band.
Yeah. The third of the triumvirate I want to talk about. I've got a friend called Steve who's the biggest fan of The Fall, and I know you've written about The Fall. I don't know if Steve could unmute and ask her. He was very keen to ask a question because he's much more of a Fall fan than I am. Steve Titley, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, can.
You're right, Mick. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, I'm enjoying this.
I've got your book about The Fall. I've read it at least once. I can't find it. It's somewhere around there. But anyway, it's okay. I was going to show it you to prove it, but It's here somewhere. Yeah, I was just interested because obviously, you know, I think we're all a bit envious. I mean, I do a bit of dabbling writing, not at your level, but even if you don't write, I'm envious of your history going around with Manchester bands and stuff. And I think we should probably say it's great to Manchester, and because Marcus was always keen to say we're a Salford band, although we're formed in Prestwich, you know, I'm not sure whether Baines, Friel, and Martin Bram have written them all down to give them their due, who formed the Fall with him. Where they came from, I'm not sure, but anyway, let's assume, because it's obviously the truth, that the Fall were the greatest group of all times, you know what I mean, ever. And you know, and it shouldn't be ranked, should it? Really, it's not a competition. If you love Ollie Murs as much as I love the Fall, great, I'm happy for you, you know. But like, it is worrying that some kids are brought up thinking that Oasis are the greatest Manchester band ever, you know. To paraphrase Lennon, they're not even the greatest band to come out of Greater Manchester. But who's the greatest band in the world for you ever?
Blimey. In the world ever,
Yeah.
it'll be a strange one. There's two bands, both American. For me, might surprise you, Steely Dan.
Oh yeah, great tune, yeah.
And probably the Velvet Underground. You know,
Yeah.
opposites, but so much. I mean, nobody ever copied Steely Dan. That's one thing. A lot of people copy Velvet Underground. You learn to play punk by playing Velvet Underground. Big bands to this day do, don't they? But you can't copy Steely Dan. Impossible. You know.
No, I'll get off now because everybody else a chance. When I did see Lou Reed, thankfully, a friend of mine, Lee Woolscroft, took me to see him at Bridgewater Hall, so I'm glad I saw him. And I think you do well in a bar fight with either of them, really, as great bands. They are great bands.
Yeah.
Thanks for the book.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the books.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mick, I think it could be said that Marky Smith was considered to be irascible at best, and you mentioned how welcoming Ian Curtis was. I just wonder who's the nicest and the least nice person you've met in your many years of interviewing various music stars.
The nicest and the least nicest. I think the nicest was probably Pete Shelley. Lovely man. Always had fun with Buzzcocks are always fun. You know, I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I'd go with that. And John Cooper Clarke.
Oh yeah.
So you know, always lovely. The least nicest. I can't really. No. You could hazard a guess who I might say. It's not Morrissey, because I didn't really know Morrissey well, but I did know Mark. Mark Smith very well as a friend for about 6 years, and we kind of, until I did the book actually, and then after the book, not because of the book, it's just that it seemed to change from being a friend to being like almost like being a member of the band, and he didn't get on with anyone in this band. He didn't speak to Mark. You know, when I've seen him turn his chair around, so he had his back to the band. You know, so I would say some way Mark's probably the rudest, but a major talent. You know. I would say, yeah, it could be absolutely horrendous. It could be a good laugh, but it was always a bit stressful. I mean, I took him away to the Lake District for 3 or 4 days to do that book, and it was okay. I mean, we had a good time, but I have to be honest. As I walked away from the house, I dropped him off Ellen and Mark and Ellen at the house. Huge weight lifting from me. I felt constricted by Mark a bit, and it wasn't something I mean, until that point, until the book, I'd always had a good time with him. But I can understand after that, I realised what it must be like to be a musician in that band. You know, some people say it's like being in the SBS, and I think that's probably good actually. So yeah, so to answer your question, probably Mark, but still love him. You know, it's that thing. You know, it's.
Mentioning Pete Shelley, I know that the Rock Against Racism gig at Platt Fields, Buzzcocks had a whole load of hit singles that were meant to be headlined, and they insisted that Steel Pulse headline because a black reggae band should go on last, so they were kind of years ahead of the time. I just want to ask about a real kind of maverick. You did mention John Cooper Clarke, but I know you've also written about Frank Sidebottom, or Chris Seavey to give him his real name, and I wondered it's very, very strange. Jack, you might say a little bit about what Frank Sidebottom was all about and what he was like as a person.
Frank came out. It was a promotional device for the Freshies in the first. Yeah. It was just Chris was such an inventive person, Chris Seavey, that he did all. And Frank was just one in a series of characters. Mr. Merton was another one. who was just a friend of Chris's wife. Went to work with his wife, and said to Chris, "It's very funny. You should get her on the telly." You know, and that's Caroline Aherne. That came out of Chris Frank 2002. Frank, when he first started, I don't think people got it. You know, you go to university, support someone like Squeeze or someone, and people just stare at him. And, you know, I had to work hard at it, but it was very, very funny. So there's a art and wonderful invention, testament to Manchester, not simply but Manchester. Although I have to say, I mean, the Freshers were great lads, and still to this day, I mean, we literally live across the road from where Frank was born. Chris was born, Dominic Ashton and Mersey. And strangely, the Smiths used to rehearse in the house. It was just, you know, we didn't know until we got here. But when we moved here, we started bumping into members of the Freshers just about 4 years forward, and kind of back in that circle. Seen them for, you know, 10 years or so. But they're always around Sale in this area. To this day, they are. I could walk out now and see Pixar bass playing in Sale from the often. So they always were with this. And when we used to go and interview Chris a lot in Simply. And I lived in Disley, that it's quite a drive, but I always felt a warmth about him and this area. So it's quite weird we should end up, you know. So yeah, you could say they're not a Manchester band, they're a Simply band. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about Frank. It's phenomenal. You know, the film's great. You know, everything. That's just a shame that Chris, you know, is not with us. But yeah, it's whatever. I mean, probably saw him about. I mean, for many years, I have to say, for many years, just to go and see Chris, it'd be like meeting two other people. You know, some of these gigs, there was nobody. Took a long time for it to actually build. And then by the time it did get huge, it was too late. You know, Chris was endless, you know, let's say. But a lovely man, you know.
Yeah. There's a Frank Sidebottom statue in Templey. There's a Ian Curtis mural in the Northern Quarter, and there's a mural in Prestwich. Nothing on Morrissey so far, but a couple of questions coming in. A lot of love coming in for Steely Dan, incidentally. But I've got a question from Phil, which I think is a very interesting one. As somebody who's been plying his trade in music journalism for so many years, do you think with the internet and social media that anybody can now be a music journalist, and maybe you know the charm and the glory of being? I'll
tell you a quick story then, because you used to go down to got a stage where I was doing the singles page about once every four. So the singles page, full page, and you had a little picture on the top and all that sort of stuff. But in those days, it was what 100, 150 singles a week. So you actually physically go to London. I used to work at a bakery at the time. I had to drive to London, and physically, if it was too late in the sounds office and shop, they'd take the singles to the printers, I'd pick them up, big sack, you know, and then hang them in the car, drive up to Watford, sit up all night in my uncle's house, a little down tet, playing all the singles, tapping it away, and stuff like Bauhaus, Bela Lugosi's Dead, and Blondie's thing. I didn't know who they were, you know. I thought they were called Bauhaus. That was single of the week, Bauhaus. And then I only read this week actually that they were thrilled it was the first single and they got single of the week in towns. And the reason I'm saying that is it's like there's a magic to doing that. There's a magic to going to London. There's a magic to going to the office, seeing those people and going to the pub around the back of Covent Garden with them and chatting. And it's not the same now. Obviously, it's completely. Internet's killed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the music press is in England. It's dead on it. I mean, I still subscribe to Mojo and Uncus and all these things, but they're going around ever decreasing circles in every way. You know, there's not how many, you know, Led Zeppelin tour in America articles can you read, and it's a very difficult thing for that. I you know, to keep those things afloat. I can't see them lost actually. And I can't really read from a screen. I don't know about anyone else. I read from a page or a paper or something. You know, walk in a coffee shop with a copy of the NME and open it. There's nothing like that. It has killed it. There are some advantages. I mean, I try and read things like Pitchfork and some of the American stuff, but I find it hard to actually concentrate staring at the screen, and also the music's. What is this to write about? I mean, I don't know. It's major artists I can think of. Absolute major world artists. I can think of Lana Del Rey in the past 4 years or so, you know, that's really come through. And that's, you know, it's very difficult to find something that's worth reading about or writing about. It's very sad.
I could talk to you on this all day, Mick, but I'll just hit you with one more question coming all the way from Bremen in Germany from Tom, who says, where are the Tony Wilsons of today? Do you think with, you know, the Arctic Monkeys launched themselves through YouTube, do you think a Tony Wilson coming along and setting up a label and getting lots of bands in, could that happen now, or is the world too different?
I don't know. He couldn't do the same because, I mean, lots of people do great labels today, but they don't, for some reason, they got the look right before the music in a certain way, which I think was accidental. It's Peter Saville which did it. And there's a few stumbling blocks, but there's nothing quite like a factory, you know, and that carried right away through. You know, so would there be? I don't know. There were great labels today. Could be in Manchester even. You know, I don't. I'd rather not comment on that.
You've articulated the Manchester music scene brilliantly. If people want to read more, how can they get hold of your books? What's the best?
Well, the best way is still to walk into Waterstones when you're allowed, you know, and it's open again now, and just go to the music section. And there's a factory book, fall book, Frank Cyberman book, but Amazon, of course. You know, I think there's about 25 of them on Amazon. So, a very quality, of course. You know, some are good, some not so good. There you go. But Stone Roses, Ian Curtis, biography which he did with Lindsay Reed, who was Tony Wilson's wife. Well, there's lots of Joy Division books. In fact, just finishing another one now. So literally this week. So that should be out in about 6 months, I hope. That's the extent of me plugging. I'm not the world's greatest salesman, as you probably know.
We always have a couple of minutes of reflection, so I'm going to give you I'm going to put you on the spot, but I'm going to give you a couple of minutes grace. But we're going to play Desert Island Discs, and I want me to give you your best 8 tracks by any Manchester band or artist. But you've got a couple of minutes to think about it, or scribble down a few notes. And
8 tracks.
Well, that's the Desert Island Disc thing. If you can come up with 6, that'd be great. The 6 best tracks by Manchester bands. But I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do it. And while Mick's doing that, thank you very much again to Mick Middles. Please show your appreciation. Absolute legend on the Manchester music scene. And we always
write this down.
We always have a couple of minutes from quiet reflection at the moment. I'd just like to say that music is a kind of community, isn't it? And we've lost Les McEwen yesterday, who was very much a Scottish rather than a Manchester artist. But I used to pass Granada most days because I live quite near, and hundreds of Bay City Roller fans would be assembled outside. We lost Jim Steinman, the genius behind Meatloaf, a couple of days ago. A couple of weeks ago, we lost Sylvian from the fantastic New York Dolls. And I think there's something about the music industry that when somebody we've never met dies, we still kind of feel it. And I guess I should also mention, if we're talking Manchester music, the tragic happenings at the arena a couple of years back, and the 22 people who were killed at that time. So I'd like to just take a couple of minutes, not a couple of months, a couple of minutes of quiet reflection for 2 minutes, please. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm making our techies work hard. I'm going to go back to Mick to ask him for the 6 best tracks by Manchester bands.
I've got 6 here. The distractions, time goes by so slow. Why the distractions didn't make, I don't know. They signed to Ireland and all went there straight. That's one of them. Chameleon, Swamp Thing. Dead Souls, Joy Division. One of my favourite Joy Division track. In fact, my favourite 2 Joy Division tracks actually were on Factory on Sodio Sentimental, which they gave away, you know, to your French label, which is a very weird thing to do. Atmosphere and Dead Souls. Although they appear on Factory later. Temptation, New Order, it's my favourite New Order song. And Easter House, Get Back to Russia. I believe there's a bit of interest in Easter House again now. They're not, they're not together at all. But they've one album, Contenders, on London Records. And he used to tour with the Smiths, and we're very close to the Smiths. And then fell out with Morrissey, strangely enough. But yeah, and I've run out now. I can't think of any others, but Yargo, and I can't remember the single now. So it was a great record.
Bill Best is very pleased, but Steve Titley, the Fall fan, is not looking very happy on my gallery view. But I'd just like to give an absolute massive thank you to Mick Middles one more time. Please show your appreciation. And to our poet today, Susan Darlington.